In a clinical laboratory today, an ordinary backyard weed is actively neutralizing strains of a virus that have already adapted to and defeated leading prescription drugs. For more than 1,000 years, it was used as a foundational medicine across 3 continents. In traditional Eastern herb shops, prescriptions are still filled with it today under a botanical title older than the United States. The English gave it 4 distinct names, and every one of them was a promise. Self-heal, heal all heal. Wound-Wort. And it is almost certainly growing in your front yard right now. But what almost no one in America realizes is that a century ago, this exact plant and the knowledge of how to use it was systematically written out of modern society. Not by accident, by committee, on paper, with signatures. The medical schools that taught it were forced to close. The textbooks that mapped it were shelved. The doctors who used it were relabeled as quacks. Within a single generation, 1,000 years of human knowledge was transformed into a nuisance weed you pay a lawn service to eliminate. This is the story of Prunella vulgaris, the plant that never stopped working. It just stopped being remembered. To understand how something so valuable became invisible, we have to look back to a massive cultural trade. For hundreds of years, local botanical knowledge was a matter of survival. Lessons about the landscape were passed from parents to children. If a plant earned a reputation, its story traveled with it. Different communities, separated by oceans and languages, looked at this same purple flower and arrived at the same conclusion. This one matters. Old world carpenters pressed its crushed leaves onto cuts. Traditional European practitioners used it when severe throat infections struck. On the other side of the world, it was brewed into cooling teas and consumed as a vegetable. It is a low-growing plant with a square stem and a spike of small purple blooms. It appears in lawns, along forgotten paths, and at the edges of fields. Yet today, most people walk right past it. Most people who see it call it a weed. Most people who know its name have no idea they are staring at it. For most of the 20th century, that 1,000-year record was dismissed as folklore. Then the laboratories caught up. Most forgotten plants stay forgotten. Prunella vulgaris didn't. Peer-reviewed studies brought scientists back to this exact lawnweed. They weren't studying legends, they were isolating chemistry. Laboratory analysis revealed a dense concentration of bioactive compounds, rosmarinic acid, triterpenes, and heavy molecular weight polysaccharides. In controlled studies, researchers tested extracts from this common weed against aggressive viral strains. The compounds reduced viral replication dramatically. But here is the detail that changed everything. The standard pharmaceutical weapon against this classification of virus is Acyclovir. Over time, some strains adapted to survive it. The Prunella vulgaris extract showed activity against those drug-resistant strains as well. Think about that. A plant you run over with a lawnmower showed activity against strains that had already adapted to a major pharmaceutical treatment. Researchers wanted to understand how a common weed could do this. It wasn't magic, it was mechanism. Most synthetic drugs attack a virus after it enters a cell. Prunella vulgaris appeared to use a different strategy. Its polysaccharides interfered with the entry process itself, making it harder for viral proteins to attach to healthy cells. The plant didn't act like a weapon, it acted like a microscopic shield. Scientists weren't impressed by stories, they were impressed by a repeatable mechanism. While millions of homeowners were deciding how to spray this flower out of their lawns, researchers were spending years trying to understand what was happening inside its cells. The same plant, 2 completely different worlds. And the viral research turned out to be only the beginning. Those same compounds are now attracting attention in another field, chronic inflammation. So how does an internationally respected medicine become a nuisance weed? It didn't disappear, it was pushed aside. In the early 20th century, American medicine became increasingly standardized around laboratory science, pharmaceuticals, and surgery. Institutions that taught traditional botanical medicine found themselves outside the new model. Many could not survive the new requirements. An entire body of botanical knowledge faded from mainstream medical education. The plants were never removed from nature. They were removed from the curriculum, written out of textbooks, excluded from training. There was no place in the system for an unpatentable plant growing freely in a field. And this is where that history reaches your front door. Every summer, millions of people mow, pull, and spray Prunella vulgaris, the plant our ancestors called heal-all, we now treat as an eyesore. But the flower never read the reports. It kept growing in the same lawns, fields, and parks year after year, waiting for someone to notice it again. Look for the square stem that marks it as part of the mint family. Look for the leaves growing in opposite pairs. Look for the small purple blooms gathered into a blunt spike. Once you learn to recognize it, you'll never mistake it for ordinary grass again. Traditionally, the leaves and flowers were gathered, dried, and brewed into teas or used as gargles for sore throats. One important warning: self-heal absorbs elements from the soil around it. Never gather it from contaminated ground or chemically treated lawns. The truth is, you don't need a prescription to walk into your own yard. And you don't need permission to learn the name of a plant that has been standing there the entire time. Traditional growers kept knowledge alive by passing it from one person to another. So if you've ever discovered a wild plant, a gardening lesson, or a piece of old wisdom that turned out to be more valuable than it first appeared, share it in the comments below. After all, that exchange of curiosity is how the story of self-heal survived long enough for us to rediscover it today.